When I asked my wife if she was cheating, she didn't deny it. She just smirked. That was the moment I knew I needed a different kind of answer. So I showed up at her precious charity gala with a woman who made her look like she didn't even exist. And believe me, that was only the beginning. Back then, I thought I understood what love really meant. Lila Hartman and I had been married for 5 years, and on the surface, it looked like the dream everyone wants to show off on social media. Perfect lighting, fake smiles, those caption moments that hide all the cracks underneath. My name's Noah Bennett, 33 years old, a project director for one of the top tech companies in Massachusetts. The kind of guy who never forgot an anniversary, who still brought flowers home on random Tuesdays, who kept trying to date his own wife even after most people would have just settled. But lately, something had been crumbling under that perfect surface, and I couldn't keep pretending not to notice. At first, the signs were easy to miss. Lila's kisses became quick, almost robotic. Her excuses stacked up higher than our laundry. She was getting home later and later from her glamorous event planning job, smelling like expensive wine and a perfume I didn't recognize. And it sure as hell wasn't hers. Whenever I suggested we sneak away for a weekend trip or even just grab dinner at our favorite Italian spot, she'd snap. It's just work, Noah. Not all of us clock out at 5. Out in the world, she was magnetic. 30 years old, the kind of woman who could charm CEOs and celebrities without breaking a sweat. Always polished, always poised, the perfect trophy for a guy like me at corporate events. But once those front doors closed behind us, Lila turned into a ghost, floating through our penthouse like she didn't even live there. I kept telling myself it was the stress. After all, managing events for Boston's elite isn't exactly a low-pressure gig. But then the little things started stacking up. The way her phone would light up with texts she'd quickly delete the second I walked into a room. The gym sessions that always got rescheduled. The designer dresses that used to be for our date nights, now reserved for client meetings, I was somehow never invited to. Still, I found 100 ways to excuse it all away. Because that's what love does. It blinds you. It wraps red flags up like pretty little banners and convinces you they're just part of the decor. Until one Friday night in March when everything changed. A client canceled on me last minute, and I thought it was a sign. I swung by that little Italian place Lila loved. The one where she used to close her eyes and moan over the handmade tagliatelle like it was some kind of religious experience. Maybe, just maybe, we could have a real conversation. Maybe I could finally tell her about the European vacation I'd been secretly planning to save whatever pieces of us were still left. The second I walked into our penthouse, I knew. The air wasn't peaceful, it was loaded. And not with anything good. There was a masculine cologne hanging in the air, thick and out of place. And underneath it, a smell that didn't need any imagination. In the living room, 2 wine glasses waited on the coffee table. One marked with the deep stain of Lila's favorite Merlot, the other nearly empty. And there, draped carelessly over the back of our custom leather sofa, was a man's suit jacket. Expensive, tailored, definitely not mine. My heart kicked hard against my ribs, but my mind stayed weirdly detached, like I was watching someone else's nightmare unfold in high definition. I drifted toward the bedroom. There was a soft light spilling from beneath the door. Earlier that day, Lila had texted me that she was working from home, something she almost never did. Suddenly, it made perfect, sickening sense. Her phone sat charging on the nightstand. Right on cue, the screen lit up. CM. Same room tonight. Can't wait to have you. Her passcode? Her own birthday. Laughably simple. Within minutes, the whole dirty double life she'd been leading unfolded in front of me. Texts, explicit photos, videos that made my stomach turn, hotel bookings that perfectly lined up with her so-called client trips. And the man she'd been throwing it all away for? Bryce Dalton, her personal trainer. For a moment, shock held me frozen. But then something colder, sharper, took its place. Not anger, something much more dangerous. Clarity. If Lila wanted to be a master of deception, she was about to find out what real exposure felt like. And it wouldn't happen quietly behind closed doors. No, I was going to dismantle her reputation right in the arena she cared about most, under the ruthless, judging eyes of Boston's elite. I heard the front door creak open while I was still scrolling through her trail of betrayal. Quickly, I shut off the lights and slid into the armchair tucked in the corner of our bedroom, swallowed up by the shadows. She tiptoed into the apartment like a guilty teenager sneaking past curfew. In her red-bottom Louboutins, she checked her reflection in the hallway mirror, then peeled off her coat and whispered into her phone. "The idiot's still not home," she chuckled. I smiled in the dark as the door to our bedroom swung open. "Welcome home, Lila," I said, my voice low and calm. The real game had only just begun. "Don't worry about me, sweetheart," I said, flashing a small, knowing smile. "I'll be there. You just won't see me coming." She chuckled without a care in the world, turning her attention back to the mirror. "Sure, Noah. Whatever you say." If she only knew what was waiting for her just around the corner. The envelope in my pocket felt like it weighed 100 pounds, heavy with 6 years' worth of lies I was finally ready to throw back in her face. Outside, the Grand Meridian shimmered against the Boston skyline, its glass facade catching the city lights like a jewel. Stretch limos crawled along the circular driveway, unloading the finest-dressed liars and schemers Massachusetts had to offer for the spring charity gala. Photographers elbowed each other, fighting for the perfect shot to plaster on tomorrow's gossip pages. Harper and I sat quietly in her town car, parked just a block away, waiting for the right moment. "Lila just got here," Harper said, glancing at her phone. "And guess who's on her arm? Bryce Dalton. Bold little move, don't you think?" "Perfect," I said, straightening my midnight blue tuxedo. "Let's give her 20 minutes. I want her relaxed, sipping champagne, convinced she's untouchable." Harper looked every bit the weapon. She was in her custom crimson gown, the same signature color Lila always wore to claim the spotlight. "Ready to watch the queen snake lose her crown?" she asked, flashing a razor-sharp grin. "I've been ready longer than I care to admit," I told her. At exactly 9:30 p.m., we stepped inside. Timing couldn't have been better. The announcer had just called Lila up as the event chair, and every head was already turned toward her when we strolled through the massive doors. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Forks froze halfway to mouths. I felt the weight of every stare as they recognized me, not as Lila's sidekick this time, but as something different. Something they hadn't seen before. Up on the stage, Lila clutched her champagne flute like it was a lifeline, her free arm casually looped through Bryce Dalton's. I watched her scan the room and then spot me. Her whole face drained of color so fast, I thought she might actually hit the floor. Bryce followed her gaze, recognized me, and practically ripped his arm away from hers like she was contagious. Harper and I moved through the crowd like we owned the place, shaking hands with CEOs, celebrities, and influencers who had always seen me as Lila's husband, nothing more. "Noah, we missed you at the Henderson launch," Daniel Cross, a big-time tech investor, called out. "Been busy reinventing myself," I said smoothly, knowing full well that Lila was watching my every move like a trapped animal. When we finally reached Bryce, I extended my hand with deliberate politeness. His face twisted into a mess of guilt and panic, trying to calculate if there was any way he could salvage what little dignity he had left. "Dalton," I said loud enough for nearby guests to catch. "Didn't realize personal training included extracurricular cardio. Quite the impressive service package." He choked on his champagne, stumbling back a step. Harper smiled sweetly, tilting her head. "He's moved on from that workout routine," she said, her voice dripping with sugar and venom. "Now he's working on letting go." She slipped her hand through my arm, letting every bystander know exactly whose side I was on now. Finally, Lila snapped out of her frozen state and marched toward me, her fake smile stretched so tight it could have cracked. She grabbed my elbow and dragged me toward the upstairs balcony with a death grip. "We need to talk. Now." The second we were alone, the walls came crashing down. Her hands trembled as she clutched her champagne glass. "Who is she? What the hell do you think you're doing here? You said you couldn't come." "I said a lot of things, Lila," I said calmly. "Just like you." I reached inside my jacket and pulled out the manila envelope, the nail in the coffin she never saw coming. Her eyes locked on it like it was a live grenade. "What's that?" she demanded. I handed it to her without a word. "Your greatest hits compilation." She rifled through it, each page cutting deeper. Photos of her slipping into hotel lobbies, screenshots of dirty messages, receipts tying every lie together. "You've been spying on me?" she gasped, laughing in that hollow, fake way people do when they're cornered. "This is pathetic, Noah." "No," I said, stepping closer, my voice cold but steady. "What's pathetic is sleeping next to someone for 6 years while screwing someone else behind his back." Her tone changed instantly, cold, calculating. "If you go public with this, we both go down. You really want that? You want to humiliate yourself too?" I smiled. I don't have to make anything public, Lila, I said quietly. You're going to do it all on your own. You're destroying everything, she hissed, panic flashing in her eyes. No, I said, my voice almost gentle. I'm cleaning house. Her head darted around, desperate for an exit, a way to claw back some control. But there was none. For the first time maybe in her whole life, Lila Hartman had no power. None. I left her standing there on the balcony, champagne flute trembling, envelope clutched in shaking hands, as the perfect little world she'd built came crashing down around her designer heels. Harper was waiting for me in the hall, 2 glasses of champagne ready. How's our cornered fox? She asked with a wicked smile. Panicking, I said, savoring the cold, sweet taste of victory as I took a sip. And you know what they say, when a fox panics, it starts biting its own tail. 20 minutes later, Harper and I made our exit, gliding down the grand staircase as camera flashes exploded around us. A reporter from Page 6 pushed through the crowd, microphone in hand. Mr. Bennett, what a surprise tonight. Is there something going on between you and Miss Monroe? I looked straight into the camera, knowing full well Lila would see this footage the next morning when her world finished burning. This isn't a comeback, I said with a cool, easy grin. This is a rebirth. By 5 a.m., her empire of lies was crumbling fast, and my phone was blowing up with headline after headline. Event planner to the stars, Lila Hartman caught in year-long affair with celebrity trainer. Boston's power couple implodes, Noah Bennett exposes wife's affair. Bryce Dalton training more than muscles for Massachusetts's elite women. The headlines hit like hammer blows. Someone had leaked everything, the texts, the hotel receipts, the photos of them slipping into the Langham when she was supposed to be working late. And it wasn't me. I had a good guess who gave it the final push, but honestly, I wasn't about to complain. 17 calls. That's how many times Lila tried to reach me in just 2 hours. I didn't answer. I just sat at the kitchen counter watching my phone buzz like a dying insect while I slowly sipped my coffee. By midday, Bryce Dalton had vanished from social media entirely, accounts wiped clean like he'd never existed. Not that it helped him. By noon, Elevation Fitness released a statement cutting him loose for conduct unbecoming of our professional standards. I forwarded everything I had to my lawyer, who wasted no time filing the divorce paperwork. Along with it, he filed an emergency order. Lila had 48 hours to vacate our apartment. The judge barely had to blink at the mountain of evidence before signing off on it. While Lila was God knows where trying to salvage what was left of her crumbling empire, I stayed busy. I packed up every scrap of her personal life into cardboard boxes, designer dresses, $1,000 shoes, handbags that cost more than some people's mortgages, all crammed together like yesterday's trash. I shut down our joint bank accounts, canceled her credit cards, changed every password we'd ever shared. Petty? Maybe. But it felt damn good. It was close to 10 at night when I finally heard the key scrape in the lock. I stayed seated on the couch, a glass of whiskey in hand, watching the Massachusetts skyline glitter through the massive windows. Lila burst through the door like a hurricane, mascara running down her cheeks, hair a wild mess, still wearing the champagne silk gown from the gala. You've destroyed me, she screamed, slamming the door hard enough to knock a framed photo off the wall. My phone won't stop ringing. Cancelled contracts, pulled partnerships. 6 years of building my career gone. In one damn day? I set my whiskey down gently, keeping my voice even. No, Lila, I said. I'm not the one tearing you down. You're the one who tied the noose. Her eyes darted around the room until they finally landed on the mountain of boxes stacked neatly against the wall. What is this? I stood up, facing her without flinching. Your life. Packed and ready to go. The movers will be here Monday. She lunged toward me, anger and desperation fighting for control. You were cold first, Noah. Always working, always distracted. She spit the words out like they would somehow excuse it. I stayed silent, letting her dig her own grave. I was lonely. Don't you get it? I needed something. I laughed softly, shaking my head. Lonely. I repeated. I spent 3 years eating dinners alone while you chased clients around Boston. I spent weekends waiting on a woman who was never coming home. You want to talk about lonely? Try sitting in an empty house with nothing but broken promises. Tears welled up in her eyes. Bryce was a mistake, she whispered, reaching out to grab my hand. A stupid, meaningless mistake. I pulled away. A mistake. I repeated, my voice hard. Meeting someone in hotel rooms under fake names every week for over a year? Buying burner phones to hide your tracks? Planning lies months in advance? That's not a mistake, Lila. That's a lifestyle. She sniffled, trying to keep up the act. I was confused. No, I said, voice low and sharp. You weren't confused. You were cheap. You traded everything we built for a few hours of bad decisions and the pathetic thrill of getting away with it. Her tears flowed freely now, but I felt nothing. No pity. No anger. Just emptiness. You're being so cruel, she sobbed. The Noah I married would never The Noah you married, I interrupted. Died the moment he saw those messages. You didn't just cheat once, you murdered us, one betrayal at a time. She crumbled onto the sofa, shoulders shaking. What am I supposed to do now? Where am I supposed to go? I stared at her coldly. That stopped being my problem the second you crawled into another man's bed. She looked up, fire flashing in her eyes. You can't just throw me out like garbage. I walked to the window, looking out at the endless city lights stretching into forever. I'm not throwing you out, Lila. I'm just opening the door you already chose to walk through a long time ago. Even though I kept my face calm, inside I could feel the grief of what we'd lost, the ghost of the love we once had. I remembered Bali, our honeymoon, her laughing in the surf like the world couldn't touch us. I remembered anniversary dinners I spent alone, the table set for two, only one chair ever filled. Had it all been a lie? Or had we just let it rot away, little by little, until there was nothing left but a carcass? When Lila finally slinked off to the guest room, broken and humiliated, I went to the closet and opened the small safe we'd hidden away years ago. Inside was an old photo from the day we got married. Santa Monica Beach. Sunset. Her head thrown back in laughter, my arms around her like I thought I could protect us from anything. I stared at it for a long moment, remembering the man I used to be. Then I tore the photo in half. Kept my half. Dropped hers into the trash without hesitation. Tomorrow, I'd finish clearing out the rest of our life together. After that, the only thing left standing would be me. A week after the gala, Lila Hartman wasn't just disgraced, she was radioactive. She'd gone from Boston's most sought-after event planner to a walking cautionary tale. Her name was poison in every boardroom, whispered in every rooftop cocktail party like a warning. 3 luxury brands dropped her in public statements. The charity board she clawed her way onto? Her name disappeared from their website overnight, like she never even existed. And I watched it all happen from a distance, sipping my coffee with a peace I hadn't felt in years. Former clients lined up to voice their shock and disappointment, their statements dripping with outrage. But the tabloids? They weren't content with just one juicy scandal. They started digging deeper. Rumors popped up like weeds, whispers that Bryce hadn't been her only extracurricular activity. There were stories about a bartender at her favorite Soho lounge, a client's brother, maybe even a woman from her office. Whether any of it was true, I couldn't say. But the Lila I thought I knew? She had died the night I found those texts. And whatever wore her face now was capable of just about anything. Bryce Dalton wasn't faring much better. Elevation Fitness didn't waste a second releasing a formal statement denouncing his gross violation of professional ethics and confirming he'd been fired on the spot. Within a few days, 4 more married clients came forward, each with their own horror story about Bryce's so-called specialized training methods, which apparently had nothing to do with dumbbells and meal plans. He scrubbed his social media clean and, according to Harper's sources, packed up and fled to Tampa, where his brother ran a boat rental business. The guy who used to charge $300 an hour to tone abs now spent his days hiding from photographers on a Florida dock. Meanwhile, Lila's texts kept rolling in. Desperate apologies mixed with thinly veiled threats. Please call me back, followed by, if you don't remove those pictures, my lawyer will destroy you. I read each one without replying, letting them pile up like trash waiting for collection. The more she spiraled, the calmer I felt. 5 days after she moved out, the doorman buzzed my apartment. Mr. Bennett, your ex-wife is downstairs. She's insisting on seeing you. I almost told him to turn her away. But curiosity won out. Send her up, I said. And call me back in 5 minutes with an emergency unless I tell you otherwise. When I opened the door, I barely recognized the woman standing there. Gone was the polished, high society Lila. This woman wore faded jeans and a wrinkled sweater, her hair pulled back messily, no makeup hiding the bruised circles under her eyes. She looked small, beaten, defeated. You've got 5 minutes, I said, stepping into the hallway and pulling the door closed behind me. You don't get more. Thank you, she rasped, voice raw and brittle. I know I don't deserve even that. We stood there for a beat, awkward and heavy, before she broke the silence. Bryce dumped me, she said, letting out a bitter, broken laugh. The minute the story hit, he texted me that I was too much drama and blocked me. Shocking, I said dryly. The guy who helps married women cheat turns out to have loyalty issues. She flinched at that. I deserve that, she whispered. What do you want, Lila? I'm busy. Her eyes flooded with tears, her voice cracking. I made a horrible mistake, Noah. I didn't know what I was throwing away until it was already gone. You were the only real thing I ever had. I studied her, searching for any trace of manipulation. But all I saw was desperation. Raw, miserable desperation. No, Lila, I said quietly. I wasn't real to you. I was another trophy to show off, no different than your handbags and your jewelry. That's not true, she cried. Remember Santorini? Remember when we got lost and stumbled into that little restaurant and the owner taught us how to dance? Remember how we laughed until we couldn't breathe? I felt something stir inside me for half a second. Not love, just the ghost of what used to be. And I crushed it without hesitation. Those memories died, I said coldly. The first time you slipped into a hotel room with him. She reached for my hand, but I pulled away without a second thought. I know I can't fix this, she said, her voice trembling. But I need you to know I'm sorry. Not just because I got caught, because of everything. There's a big difference, I said, between regret and remorse. Regret is wishing you hadn't been caught. Remorse would have stopped you before the first kiss. She stared at the floor, her tears splattering onto the marble. What happens now? She asked, broken. You move on, I said simply. And so do I. Separately. She looked up, her voice barely a whisper. Will you ever forgive me? I met her gaze squarely. You don't miss me, Lila, I said. You miss having someone who forgave you for everything. That man doesn't exist anymore. She nodded slowly, as if she already knew the answer but had hoped against hope anyway. Then, fumbling in her pocket, she pulled out her wedding ring. She held it out like some pitiful offering. I thought you should have this back, she said. I took it from her fingers, feeling the weight of it for only a moment, the memory of the promises it once symbolized. Then I let it fall from my hand. The metallic ping echoed in the hallway, sharp and cold. It's just metal, I said. Same as you were just a shell. Without another word, she turned and walked away, her footsteps heavy against the marble floor. Back inside, I sat down at my desk and opened my email. There, waiting for me, was a message from my lawyer. Congratulations. Property and apartment now solely in your name. Divorce proceedings officially complete. I poured myself another whiskey and walked a slow circuit around the apartment. My apartment now. Truly mine. The place felt different, emptier, sure, but also peaceful. Like a constant buzzing in the background had finally gone quiet. I sank onto the couch, letting the silence settle around me like a blanket. A silence I realized I'd been craving for a long, long time, even before I knew what had been causing all the noise. Monday morning came bright and clear, the spring sunshine pouring through the windows. At precisely 9 o'clock, the buzzer rang. The moving crew showed up, 3 big guys in matching uniforms ready to clear out the past. They didn't have much work to do. I'd spent the weekend boxing up every last trace of Lila's existence. I pointed to the neat stacks of boxes, each one carefully labeled with black marker. These all go, I said simply. And just like that, I started taking my life back, one box at a time. Each box had the destination taped neatly across the top, addresses for where her things would go to die. The movers worked fast, hauling her designer clothes, her overpriced shoes, her jewelry, and all the little mementos she once thought defined her. They loaded everything onto the service elevator without a word. I leaned against the kitchen counter, sipping my coffee, feeling lighter with every box that disappeared from my life. The last carton to leave held the framed photos I had stripped from the walls, picture-perfect lies pretending to be a real life. A museum of fiction now packed up and ready for storage or the nearest dumpster. Lila never showed. Never called. Never apologized. All I got was a final text that buzzed in at 6 that morning. I'm gone. Don't look for me. I read it once, deleted it, and blocked her number without a second thought. You'd think it would hurt more blocking someone who once felt like the center of your universe. But instead, it felt like slamming the door on a hurricane I had survived. That night, for the first time in years, I lit a fire in the rarely used fireplace in my living room. Not ours anymore. Just mine. From the desk drawer, I pulled out one last thing, a handwritten envelope Lila had left behind. Across the front, in her careful script, it read, "Read this when you're ready to forgive me." I didn't even open it. I dropped it straight into the fire and watched the flames eat through her words before I could ever read them. Into the flames went everything else too. Our wedding photos. Vacation snapshots. Ticket stubs from first dates that had once meant the world to me. All of it blackened, curled, and vanished into smoke. I only kept the pictures that belonged to me, places I had loved, memories I had made that didn't have her shadow on them. The fire roared higher for a moment, devouring 6 years of my life and leaving nothing but ash in its place. It should have felt tragic, burning all those years away. But instead, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, peace. Those weren't memories worth saving. They were ghosts that needed to be exorcised. About a week later, Harper showed up at my door carrying an obnoxiously expensive bottle of champagne. She'd been the architect behind so much of my rebirth, and it felt right to celebrate with the one person who'd seen through Lila from the very beginning. To the survivor and the victor, Harper said, raising her glass with a grin. We clinked glasses and sank into the new sectional I'd bought, my first major purchase without anyone else's opinion weighing on me. The apartment didn't even look like the same place anymore. Gone were the silly decorative pillows, the over-the-top art installations Lila had insisted on. In their place? Clean lines. Real comfort. A space that finally felt like it belonged to me. Harper tilted her head, studying my face. So, how does it feel, as she asked? Now that it's really over? I thought about it for a second, rolling the question around in my head. It's not over, I said finally. It's just beginning. For the first time, I'm actually living. She nodded, fully understanding the weight behind those words. News about Lila eventually trickled back to me through mutual acquaintances. She'd packed up what little dignity she had left and left Massachusetts altogether, hiding out in some tiny New Hampshire town where her older sister lived. Word was she'd taken a job as an assistant for a local event planner. A woman who used to throw parties for CEOs and celebrities, now fetching coffee and running errands in small-town America. Boston's social scene didn't even flinch. With their usual talent for selective amnesia, they moved on to the next scandal without missing a beat. Lila Hartman became little more than a forgotten name, someone no one even remembered inviting in the first place. Meanwhile, I kept rebuilding my life. Piece by piece. New furniture. New art. New sheets. New dishes. I stripped away every last reminder of what we used to be and built a home that was 100% mine. Each morning, I woke up without the weight of pretending. No more eggshells. No more wondering what mood would greet me at the door. The freedom wasn't about chasing someone new. It was about rediscovering myself. And damn, it felt good. One evening, I stood out on the balcony watching the city buzz to life as the sun disappeared behind the skyline. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a message from an unknown number. Just wanted to say, I always knew you deserved better. Emily. I stared at it for a second, a small smile tugging at the corners of my mouth. Emily, the woman from the cafe who had once watched Lila treat me like an afterthought. The woman who had quietly reached out after everything crumbled. Maybe, not everyone had been fooled by the show Lila put on. But this time I promised myself I wouldn't give away my heart so easily. I built new routines, ones that belonged only to me. Every morning I laced up my sneakers and ran through Central Park while the city was still waking up. The air was crisp, the world quieter, the streets mine. With every mile, my body grew lighter. Stronger. And the ache that had lived in my chest for so long? It was gone. Back home, my apartment felt nothing like the sterile museum it once was. Gone were the ridiculous statement pieces and show-off art. Instead, the walls held photos I'd taken myself, moments that meant something real to me. For the first time, I wasn't just surviving inside a facade. I was actually living. I signed up for a weekend photography class, something Lila had once scoffed at as hobbyist nonsense. But I didn't care what she would have thought anymore. I took weekend trips, hiked in the Catskills, explored parts of the city I'd never bothered with before. And the best part? I didn't have to check in with anyone. I didn't have to apologize for being happy. I even started reaching out to old friends, the ones I'd pushed away under Lila's subtle pressure. College buddies, work friends, cousins I hadn't seen in years. Piece by piece, I was stitching my real life back together. 2 weeks after Emily's text, I invited her out for coffee. Nothing fancy, a small cafe in Brooklyn, far away from the glittering world Lila used to dominate. Emily showed up in jeans and a simple blouse, no pretense, no performance. Just a real person. I used to watch you at those events, she said, stirring her latte. The way you'd scan the room looking for her. The way your face would change when she brushed you off. Was it that obvious? I asked, feeling a little embarrassed. Only to someone who was paying attention, she said with a shrug. I always thought you deserved better. I smiled genuinely this time. I'm not that guy anymore, I said. She studied me for a second, then nodded. I can see that. You're here now. You're actually present. You're not chasing someone else's approval anymore. We talked for hours about everything: books, travel, food. There was no pressure. No games. Just two people choosing to be there. No one needing anything. No one taking anything. Meanwhile, somewhere far away, Lila's collapse was finally complete. Harper's friend from the event planning world eventually confirmed what I already suspected. Lila was working as an assistant coordinator now way up in some tiny New Hampshire town, arranging weddings for couples scraping together modest budgets. The woman who once ruled Boston's high society was now folding napkins and ordering flowers for Rustic in receptions. As for Bryce Dalton, his plan to start a personal training business in Florida had flopped miserably. Last I heard, he was renting out paddle boards at his brother's boat shop. His six-figure fitness empire and his body both wrecked by the fallout. It was early September, humid and heavy, when life threw me one last unexpected curveball. I was heading back from the gym when I spotted a familiar figure waiting outside my building. Lila. She wore a faded hoodie that hung awkwardly off her thinner frame, the glamour and polish stripped away. Without the designer labels, the flawless makeup, the shiny facade, she looked smaller. Human. Almost fragile. When she saw me, her eyes flickered with a fragile hope I'd never seen from her before. "I know I shouldn't be here," she said quietly, "but I needed to talk to you." I stayed on the sidewalk. No way was I inviting her back into the home I'd fought so hard to reclaim. She stared at the ground, her voice barely above a whisper. "Bryce used me. Everyone's abandoned me. Even my own family looks at me like I'm broken." For the first time since I'd met her, Lila spoke without spin. No performance. No agenda. Just raw, painful honesty. "It wasn't because you weren't good enough, Noah," she said, lifting her eyes to meet mine. "It was because I was never decent enough to deserve you." I held her gaze calmly, no anger left in me. No sadness either. "I don't need your apologies, Lila," I said, my voice even. "I need your silence. You've given me 4 months of it already. Don't break that now." Tears spilled down her cheeks, but she didn't reach for me this time. "Do you still love me?" she asked, the words trembling. I didn't hesitate. "I love peace more," I said simply. "And you don't belong in that world." For once, she didn't argue. She just nodded, something like dignity settling back over her like a thin, tattered blanket. Without another word, she turned and walked away, swallowed up by the endless flow of strangers on the street. I stood there for a long moment, watching her disappear, feeling no anger, no longing. Just a quiet finality. She wasn't my ex-wife anymore. She was just a ghost I had finally laid to rest. That night, I sat on my balcony with a glass of whiskey, the city lights blinking to life beneath me. I put on a new playlist, one without a single song that tied me to the life we'd shared. As dusk settled over Boston, I realized something important. What I'd reclaimed wasn't just my freedom from a broken marriage. It was my identity, the version of myself I had slowly bartered away, piece by piece, during those 6 long years. Later, I opened the digital journal I had started keeping, a promise to myself to never forget. And I typed one simple entry. I didn't just survive betrayal. I transcended it. I'm already whole. When love comes again, I won't be looking for someone to complete me. I'll be sharing the life I built on my own terms. As I finished my drink, my phone buzzed. It was Harper. "Ready for that European adventure yet?" I smiled as I typed back. "Always ready for whatever's next." I locked the apartment door behind me, stepping into the elevator with a lightness in my chest I hadn't felt in years. Not because I'd forgotten the past, but because, for the first time in my life, I wasn't looking back.